Great. Well, welcome everyone. I'm Andy Pease. I'm an architect and green building consultant, and I'm a member of the San Luis Obispo City Council and a huge fan of the Climate Coalition and all the great partnerships that we're seeing through Uniting the Central Coast for Action. So I'm pleased and proud to be having a small role here today as the moderator. So thank you so much for joining us. This is the 8th of a series of Central Coast focused webinars that are informing and inspiring local clean energy development and resilience. It's being put on by Uniting the Central Coast for Action, a program of the SLO Climate Coalition. We've had previous webinars. They've been talking about examining distributed energy resource management programs, showing examples of microgrid projects, exploring how to plan and finance microgrid projects and on government facilities. And then the last two webinars focused on electric vehicles and how to maximize the benefits to the grid, all extremely relevant projects. So the Uniting the Central Coast for Action is a growing coalition of that's working to create a resounding voice for climate leadership on the Central Coast. And it's a super impressive group that that I would like to be able to thank all these fantastic partners. They're just really outstanding, and we'll note them here. As you can see, in this sense, more is better, and so we're excited to have all these people come together. The program today is on solving climate change now, finding your sweet spot for action. We have two amazing speakers, Don Maruska and Laura Albers, and I'll introduce them in just a moment. And then just to, during the presentation, we're going to have some opportunities for engagement in breakout rooms. And then if you do have questions, everybody is muted right now, but if you have questions, you're welcome to type them into the chat. At the very end, after we've had kind of our discussion opportunities, we'll go ahead and have some curated Q&A, so you can put your questions in there and we'll get to as many as we can. And if there are those that we can't, we'll try to address those in writing. We'll also at the end try to get your feedback, and so we can talk about other ways that we can work together as we develop local clean energy and resilience in our communities. So again, thanks for all our fantastic organizations that made this webinar possible. We deeply appreciate all the partnerships and look forward to working together. So I'm going to introduce both of our speakers, and then we'll begin. So the first, it's my pleasure to introduce Don Maruska. He's a founder and CEO of 3 Silicon Valley companies, a venture investor and recipient of the National Innovators Award. I started working with Don probably more than 20 years ago. He's a facilitator, but also as author of several books, but the one that I really used as a sacred text in a lot of ways is about how great decisions get made. It's just a really excellent resource. Don writes and speaks and coaches from this broad base of experience very effectively. He's the author of Solve Climate Change Now, Do What You Love for a Healthy Planet. And he'll explain and talk about the attraction method, which taps your self-motivation to sustain your efforts in a healthy climate. I've read the book, really enjoyed it, huge fan of Don's work. And our next speaker after Don will be Laura Albers, sorry, I have a typo here. And she has extensive experience in local nonprofit organizations and collaborative partnerships. And she's the program manager of SLO Climate Coalition's Resilient SLO platform, a dynamic leader and just a really exciting person. She'll lead interactive discussion about how each of us can take action to help our climate and how to have fun doing it. So we can discover how to be part of the Resilient Central Coast campaign to activate 500,000 Central Coast households to cut emissions in half by 2030. So with that, unless I've missed anything, checking on my team, I think I covered it. So we'll go ahead and let Don get started. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Andy, for the introduction, and it's wonderful to have all of you join us today. I'm delighted to connect with you today because we can solve climate change. As I describe in the opening of the book, the we is you, me, our families, friends, coworkers, community organizations, faith-based groups, and more. We can solve climate change, and that's a resounding and important conclusion from today, and I'll show you why that indeed is the case. And in fact, I would argue that we are the only ones who can solve climate change. The recent UN climate conference in Egypt underscores that our leaders will not get this done for us. I learned that firsthand when I served as Joe Biden's legislative assistant in the US Senate. Leaders I found rarely step out ahead of their constituents. Rather, they look for a parade and rush to get to the front of it. So instead of bemoaning what didn't get done at COP27, I see it as a call for us to multiply the number of people engaged in grassroots climate action. That's where the action needs to be. That's where we can make a difference now. So how do we go about multiplying the number of people engaged in climate action? What is it that we need to do? Well, first, I'd like to really involve you in sharing what you see as some of the obstacles to getting more people involved in taking climate action. So I'm going to launch this poll. And if you just click as many of the items as you think are significant obstacles that are impairing the ability to enlist more people in the important work that needs to be done. So fire away at that, and then we'll talk about how to respond to the things that you identify and the tools that are available and the way of thinking that we need to shift and change in order to go about that effectively.
It's not showing on the screen, Don.
Oh, okay.
You're sharing your screen and you're showing the book right now.
Okay. Is that
We got
is that
the poll.
showing?
We got the poll.
Oh, how did you get it?
It just popped up.
Oh, I don't see it.
Well, that's a poll. People are answering it. We've had 42 responses. Just give it a moment more.
Gina, you can also just check, put something in the chat of your thoughts without even using the poll. What do you think are some of the obstacles?
Okay,
Put it in the chat.
obstacles.
Okay. So I'm going to end the poll, but if you have more ideas that come along, let me encourage you to use the chat. So that's great. So can see that there are actually many obstacles that people encounter. These were the ones that I frequently hear from people. The ones that got the most attention from you were don't think they can make a difference. We're going to definitely address that one. Waiting for leaders or others to act. That's what we talked about before, is the inverse of what's really needed. They don't know what to do. And you're going to hear a lot from Laura about things that people can do. And no one's asked them. And they're despairing. So let's take a look at how we can go about changing these dynamics and to make them successful. So let me outline for you, because I always like to tell people, you know, what I'm going to be covering and what the key takeaways are up front so you can dial in on that. The key points that we have here are that fear won't solve this. We have to take a different approach than the approach that's commonly used in climate action, which is that we're going to hell in a handbasket. Hope encourages the required self-motivation that we need, and we're going to talk about why self-motivation is so critical in the realm of something like climate change. And then we're going to discuss how you can identify what you love to do, because that's the energy that's going to keep and sustain you and the people that you work with. And then how to choose appealing client needs to serve. And then how you can find the sweet spot, which is where what you love to do and what needs to be done match up. And that's different for different people. And we need to acknowledge that rather than trying to get everyone to fit into one particular mold and expect that that's going to work. And then how can we scale this? People often discount what individuals can do because they say, oh yeah, that's nice, but that's individual. What can we do? That was one of the main things you identified in the survey as a problem. So we want to address that. And then how can we go about celebrating success? Success and celebration of success is what can fuel us to go forward in a much more effective way. So let's go to the first point here. Why do fear-driven approaches fall short? why do we find burnout of people in the climate action space? Well, we can really see it if we look at how our brains work. And this is a positron emission tomography scan. That's looking at how the brain is functioning. This is when somebody is feeling fearful. So this is, the left is the front of the brain, the right is the back, this is the base. So what's in red is the highly activated area. So when we're fearful, our amygdala, or what some people call this lizard brain here, it's the early primordial brain that seeks to protect us, fires up, shoots the adrenaline down, and we're off to the races. What we haven't identified until we could see these images very clearly is what's the rest of the story here beyond that? What else happens in the brain? And the areas that are deactivated in our brain when we're fearful are the prefrontal cortex. That's the executive function of the brain. It figures out what to work on and how to organize things. And the cerebral lobes, the parts of our brain that come up with creative thinking for solutions. So the problem we have around climate change and our beating the drum about the fears of climate change is that it's robbing us of the thinking that we need to come up with successful results. And that's one of the reasons why people resist. We find that people will fight it, they'll deny it, they'll flee away from it, not engage, they'll freeze up, or they'll go to finger pointing, which is, oh, it's not me, it's somebody else, it's not the US, it's China, you know, they'll go to whatever else. And that's a natural response of how our brains are wired. And they're wired that way to be self-protective. Now that worked great back when the challenge was a tiger coming at us and we either had to kill the tiger or run away. But the problems like climate change, it's a chronic problem. It's not an acute problem we can swat at and get it done with. It's a chronic problem, and we have to stay in it for the long haul, even though we need to start and continue and expand urgent action now. So how do we, what's our approach to this? How do we, especially dealing with something like carbon dioxide, which is odorless, colorless, tasteless, you know, it's not like smog, you can see it. You know, we've got a challenge here that makes it very difficult for our brains that don't associate that with a challenge or a risk or something to deal with. Well, the good news is that we can engage the better parts of our brain, and we can do it if we take a structured approach that will override kind of our pre-programmed way of thinking and acting. And so the way to do that is to really engage people around what their hopes are. So this is what you can see as the brain scan of someone when they're in a hopeful state. So you'll see here that amygdala that was all fired up before is green. Green means it's neither highly activated nor deactivated. It's just in balance, and that's a good place to be. And what's activated in the red and more engaged is the prefrontal cortex and the cerebral lobes, just the brain we need. So our job is to figure out, how do we engage these better brains? How do we override the way that we naturally think about things and react to them, and make a conscious decision to take a different approach? And that's really what I call the attraction model. So the attraction model is all about how could we be, instead of a push model, which is the fear-based approach, which is pushing people to do stuff, and no one wants to be pushed into doing things. That's why we have such a polarized electorate, because people don't want to be pushed by other people. How do we instead create an action model here that acts like a magnet and attracts people to what we're seeking? So for that purpose, what I want to do is get the help here of Laura Albers. And if you just tuned in, Laura is going to be presenting in the second half of this session, but she's also going to help me in illustrating for you. She's going to model what I call a climate action conversation. How in 10 minutes you can engage people about climate and get them working and thinking with their better brains and focused on what their sweet spot is to make a difference, and with something that'll be sustainable for them. So Laura, if I can, what I'd like to do here is just ask you a couple questions. So I'm going to be your catalyst here. She's the climate solver. Laura, just briefly, what are some of the hopes that you have for a healthy climate?
Oh gosh. Well, you know, I think primarily, Dawn, I think about my kids. I'm a mother. My kids are in their 20s now, but they're still my kids. And I see how much the world's changed, over just my lifetime, and it's not for the better. And so for me, I want to be a part of figuring out how to leave this planet as something that my kids and hopefully their kids can continue to live on healthfully.
Okay, so I'm hearing that your hope for a healthy climate is that this will be something for your kids and your grandkids and for other children and generations to come, and you really want this to be a healthy place for them, and that's really where what's motivating you to be engaged in this work. Did I catch
I'd
it?
say that's definitely my top priority. Yes.
Okay, great. So I just modeled for you what a catalyst does in this conversation, which is to ask the questions and reflect back the gist of what you hear from the other person. It's very powerful when we reflect back to somebody else what they've said. It means that A, they've been heard, and B, it means that they've had a chance to hear how that sounds to themselves and to root that more deeply in themselves and in their thinking. And that'll give them the power and capability to move forward in a much more sustained way. So thanks for modeling that. So let me just go now to the next point here, which is identify what you love to do. And if you go to solveclimatechangenow.com, you'll see all kinds of lists of things and ideas and opportunities to do things. And those are all available as resources for you. But I'd like to ask you, Laura, what do you really love to do? It doesn't have to be particularly around climate. In fact, what we're going to do is try to help people find creative connections between things that intrinsically motivate them and what's happening in the climate space. So you don't have to pick something in the climate space. It might be, a passion you have. It might be something that you really love and enjoy. It could be in climate, but it could be outside of it.
Gosh, okay. Well, just my general loves. I love spending time with my family and my close friends. I love connecting with people. I really love supporting people. So I'm somebody who gets really motivated by helping other people if they need help. And those are kind of my general interests here. And I love being a California native.
Okay. All right. So you like being grounded in California, and you really love this role of connecting people, and especially doing that in a family or friend sort of context. So that's where you have energy. That's where when you come home from work or whatever, you still have the energy for that kind of thing, because that's what turns you on. That's what creates your self-motivation. And that's the sort of energy that we need to be tapping upon to carry us through the challenges of a chronic issue like climate change. It's going to take time to do. So great. So what we're going to do now is take a look. These are some things that you might look at. They're elaborated in more detail at the website and in the book, but different things that you can think about that might be items that would be of interest to you. Because after we go through modeling this here before you, so you can get a feel for it, we're going to invite you to pair up and go into a breakout room and to do this with one another. So one of you will be a catalyst like I am, and one of you will be the climate solver like Laura's being here, and you'll be trying this out. So I encourage you to be thinking about your answers to these questions as we go along. What are your hopes? What are the things that you love to do? And then we'll move on here to our next element, which is to choose appealing climate needs. So I really categorize climate needs in three broad areas: awareness, building understanding, helping people get connected with solutions, taking action, practical things, and advocacy activities that we might undertake. In my mind, this is what I call the AAA of climate health. And this is a very powerful dynamic, because you can enter at any one of these places. Some people are very action oriented. They want to go straight to action. Other people say, oh, I want to take some time understanding this in some more detail. Other people say, I've got all that and I want to go advocate. And different people have different interests. And the whole idea here is to give people a menu of ways to engage with climate so they can choose. Because when we're at choice, then people feel much better. They feel like, okay, they're coming from their energy rather than from the imposition of somebody else's agenda on them. So I'm going to be talking with Laura in a little bit here about which of these motivate her. But just to give a little bit of context for some illustrations of these things and to give them some context, let me cover a little bit about what are some things happening in our communities and elsewhere in this domain. And again, you can find more resources about this. It's solveclimatechangenow.com. So in awareness, there's lots of different things that you can do. You're going to be hearing in more detail about one of the ones that I think is absolutely spectacular, which is the Resilient Slow or Resilient Central Coast app, or if you're outside of the area, it's brightaction.app. But it's a great way to really dial in and understand what is driving carbon dioxide emissions. You know, how much emissions do we have? Until I went to this app, I didn't know what our household's emissions were. I didn't know which things I primarily drove them. I had some general vague ideas, but it's very, very powerful understanding what those are. And then the app has great illustrations that are keyed to your particular circumstance. So you input a few items of information, and Laura will explain this in more detail. But what comes back is a personalized menu of things that you can sort by what I can do with spending no money, what I can do with some investment, but with a huge return, what's going to really play out for me. So that's the path of going from awareness over into action, which is a great opportunity. There are also lots of things you can do, and I invite you to join with us in doing them. Like I've organized through our Rotary Club a Plant It Forward program. Some of you may remember Catherine Ryan Hyde's book, Pay It Forward. You know, people do things for us. We can't necessarily totally pay them back, but we can give that forward to other people. Well, Plant It Forward is the idea of, well, you know, we put a lot of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, at least for our kids and grandkids, we can provide them with some trees that'll help them draw that down. So we're engaged in a project of planting 1,000 trees over the next 10 years. Each of those trees sequesters, that is, converts 3¼ tons of CO2 into living carbon in the soils, which is a great opportunity. And there's lots of different partners that we're working with to do that. So great opportunities for us to be enjoying that together. The other thing on natural solutions, and I love natural solutions, you know, because long before the Industrial Revolution and we started pumping lots of CO2 in the atmosphere, nature had a great way of managing all this. It had enough trees and the right amount of CO2 being generated that it could convert that and keep it in a cycle that was balanced. And in fact, that created the stable climate that we've had for 10,000 years until very recently, that enabled civilization to occur, enabled us to have agriculture, enabled people to settle in a place because they weren't you know, moving around trying to find resources because the resources were relatively stable for them. So one of the things we can do is to really go about helping to rebuild the soils. We've lost half of the topsoil in our country because we essentially have what I call a till and kill approach, which is we grow things, then we till them all over, kill all that biology in the soil, and start all over again with chemical fertilizers. And lo and behold, the chemical fertilizers aren't known to plants. So the plants have to convert them. And when they convert them, they create things like nitrous oxide, which is 80 times more potent than carbon dioxide. So it's like methane on steroids in terms of what's happening. So we have lots of opportunities to change this around and to make a difference. Similarly with the trees, you know, recent studies showed we're losing 36 million trees a year in our urban areas, just lost trees. Net losses. So we have huge opportunities to do things. Now, the third A here is advocacy, you know, how to be a voice. And there are lots of great organizations. I love being part of Slow Climate Coalition, EcoSlow, and the Citizens Climate Lobby, just as a few. Again, if you go to the website, Slow Climate Change Now, I've listed a whole array of organizations and different things that they do, and I invite you to add ones that you enjoy to that list so that we can all be learning and growing together. So we've gone through the AAAs here and given a few examples. Laura, coming back to you, we've talked about the activities you enjoy. Which of these climate need areas of the awareness, actions, and advocacy speaks most strongly to you?
Don, I'm kind of like a tinkerer and a crafter, and I love figuring out new solutions. So I get really excited about learning things that I can kind of create for myself at home. Even if it's something simple, like, I heard a suggestion from my stepmom of collecting her extra shower water. So now I have this bucket in my shower, and then I've got these empty jugs, and I keep a little funnel in my bathroom so I can fill that in. So I kind of like doing those things and then sharing those ideas with other friends who go, oh, that's a good idea. I can do that too.
Okay.
So kind of those household things. I'm a renter, so I can't do some of those bigger projects like, installing solar or heat pumps, that type of thing. But those little things that kind of any of us can do, that's what I really get excited about.
Okay. So I hear that you like to really do the hands-on action-oriented stuff. That
Yeah.
really motivates you a lot. And thinking back, you love spending time with your family and friends and connecting people. So what would you describe as your sweet spot? And I'd invite the attendees here. You can jot in the chat any other ideas and suggestions you have for Laura about how she could combine what she loves to do with the climate needs that are out there and the climate needs that appeal to her, and add that in. That's one of the powerful things we can do as a community, is help each other be creative in the solutions we have. But what pops up for you about your sweet spot?
I think, learning, being attentive to any information around me, no matter the source, whether it's attending something like this or seeing something in the news or just noticing somebody else doing something, getting information about how I can take individual action, and then spreading that information out to the people that I know. So getting others motivated as well. So
you're in the perfect job with Resilient Slow.
I kind of am.
Super, that's good. So we thank the Slow Climate Coalition and Kristen Hazard and others for finding you and getting you in that role. So here's just an illustration, because people always ask, okay, this all sounds fine, but it sounds like it's so small scale. We did just a 2-month pilot with this Resilient Slow program that Laura identified with just 10 households. And in 2 months, they saved 16 tons of carbon dioxide, and they saved $2,400. So this can scale. And in fact, we've done some calculations just with our Rotary Club on how could our Rotary Club be a net zero club. And we found that, hey, if we plant enough trees, if we build these bioreactors to recover and restore the capacity of soils to convert CO2 into living carbon, and we work on our carbon footprints and reducing them, we could become a net zero carbon club. And so, we're thinking about how can we scale and how can we carry this forward, and how can we be aligning with youth in the community? How can we collaborate with the community partners? You saw a whole bunch of them. Maybe there's some of your groups that you'd like us to collaborate with as well. We need to pull together and do this rather than feel like we got to be silos and holding out each in our own little space. So when we do this, we can celebrate our success. That fuels our hopes. We can be a shining light for others, and we can enjoy being a climate solver. So while the book goes into a lot more detail and the things I've shared with you, for example, you can read in the appendix how to break the ice with people who haven't yet engaged with climate action, and you can see a transcript of a climate action conversation. I want to take the advantage of the fact we've got your wonderful brains and spirits here today, and to get you into a breakout room where you can try this out and do this with somebody else. And you will go through an exercise of, you'll decide, since we just have enough time to do it one way, one person being the catalyst, the other person being the climate solver. Pick who that is, do that quickly. I'll put these questions in the chat, but run through these questions, serve as a good catalyst for the other person if that's your role, or if you're a climate solver. Try out your response, but to see what can come up for you about new, expanded, or different ways that you can be making a difference, and think about how you could be using this for other people. So with that, we're going to break just for a short time. You can do this, actually, I would like you to experience how you can do this in just 8 minutes, 10 minutes. You can do it over coffee with somebody. which I think is important if we're going to get beyond our own group and multiply this group by a factor of 10 or more. We've got to do this in a quick and effective way. So I'm going to ask you to get off into breakout rooms. I think John's going to help us in setting that up. We'll set it for 8 minutes, ask you to come back and just share with a moment or two when you come back. What did you experience about it? How did it work for you as a climate solver? How did it work for you to be a catalyst? And then we're going to be diving into the good work that Laura's doing on how you can take the tools and go forward and do more. Okay? So, away we go. So what I'd love to do is just take a moment here and have a few people just share from the person who played the role of climate solver. Could you just share a moment about what the experience was like for you to go through the conversation? And how could you visualize doing this with other people? Would like to comment?
Yeah, this is Mohan, and I had a very nice conversation. And, you know, we have basically most of the people wanting to create an environment where we can create a future where people can live in healthy places, you know. Justin's definitely contributing a lot to it by using his technical know-how to promote this kind of knowledge. And I shared with him that we need to do this now. And I took in, my sweet spot was to kind of make a passive home, a net zero home, safe home for the future generations to come. And we have the technology to do that now. We can create these things right now. We can build these things right now. And we have materials that will resist fire, water, termite, and it's a great opportunity. So thank you very much, Justin, for your conversation with you.
Super, super. So who was somebody that served the role of catalyst, and what was that like for you? And can you visualize doing this with more people to help engage and expand our ranks of people who are translating their good intentions into results? Kate, do you have something you'd like to share? You're unmuted at the moment.
I should have been ready to unmute. Thank you.
That's okay.
Yes, you know, one of the things that I'm learning how to do is to talk to people about climate. And it's so hard because a lot of times what comes up, and what happened in my breakout group too, is there's just a lot of pain and heartbreak that's just right on the surface, you know? So kind of like awareness, we have so much awareness sometimes that we're stuck in, you know, something that's terrible, grief and helplessness. And
Yeah.
I don't, you know, that doesn't, it needs to get communicated. So
Sure.
I think there's a role for kind of sitting with people and actually caring for that and listening. And then,
Yes.
you know, and then you can kind of move out of that more.
Right.
And
That's a
build-
very important kind of role to play. And so just to comment on that, one of the things that you sometimes need to do before having a conversation like this with somebody is to have a pre-conversation, is to see if they're available for the conversation, is to say, hey, look, I'd like to share with you some of the things that are exciting me about the opportunities we have for a healthy climate. Would you like to have a conversation about that? And would that be of interest to you to do now or at another time? You know, so they can choose and see if they are available. And frankly, my experience is if you ask people about what their hopes are, they can shift their brains pretty fast, unless they're in a very, very dark place. So sometimes just asking them the question about what their hopes are will flip their thinking from the fearful thinking over into the hopeful one. It's a power that we have and can apply. But you know what I see Gina there and others that want to comment, and we have time for more commentary, but I want to go and be sure that before we've got time for Laura's presentation here. So let's go to Laura, and anybody who wants to stay on, I'd be glad to talk with you. I love to do talks, workshops, live action projects with people. If you're interested in that, just let me know. We can get connected around that. But Laura, let's go to you and be sure that you can share the important information you have about resilient slow and resilient
Great.
Central Coast.
Thank you, Dawn. Yeah, and I'll try to whip through here a longer presentation in 14 minutes or less. But just to let you all know, because there are a lot of things that have been brought up in the chat that I'd love to comment on and talk about, and more questions. I have time to hang out after 1. So if anybody has questions and they want to stay today, we can hang out for a little bit then and keep talking. And then of course we can, connect after that too. So let me show you though the fun part that I came here with. There we go. Okay. So like I said, I'm going to skip through this presentation because we only have a very short period of time, but I am here. I am Laura Albers. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the program manager for the Resilient SLO program, which is one of the programs of SLO Climate Coalition. This program, the United Central Coast for Action, is also a program of SLO Climate Coalition. So hopefully most of you are familiar with SLO Climate Coalition's vision and mission, but it's right there for you, as well as on our website if you'd like more information. These are a few of the accomplishments that SLO Climate Coalition has been able to achieve. And I'd like to say that almost the entirety of these accomplishments are achieved by unpaid volunteer leadership. There are some positions now that we are being able to pay people for, but there are a lot of really smart, really dedicated people in our community who are building this work. And I want to give a huge shout out to them. So these are the programs. Again, go on the website to learn a little bit more about all 4 of the main flagship programs of SLO Climate Coalition. But I'm here today to share a little bit about Resilient SLO. So Resilient San Luis Obispo is an accessible and approachable source for everyday opportunities for everyone. So anyone can participate in taking action to help our local climate initiatives. So just question by a show of hands or reactions if you want to do reactions. I'm curious how many of you are here who care about our climate and understand that climate change isn't really all that great of a thing. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay. So we all understand that. Now I'm also wondering how confident you all are that you're aware of every single way that you personally can make a difference when it comes to taking climate action. And I would love if you go ahead in the chat and just kind of put in there some of the ways that as an individual, just as a person, we can potentially take climate actions. And go ahead and add those to the chat. We'll make sure to save this chat, by the way, because like I said, there's a lot of good info that's already been put in there. So I like to share all the ideas that come through there. You can go ahead and hand in or turn in those. Great. Electric compost, avoiding airplane. Yeah. EVs. Yes, absolutely. Okay. You can keep adding ideas if you'd like as we're going away. As we're going along here. I'm wondering too, EV is electric vehicle. Thanks. There's a lot of acronyms in this climate space, and I'm constantly trying to get out of that because a lot of people don't know those. So we know a lot of different ways that we can take action, but I'm wondering how many of you actually engage in all these actions on a regular basis. I mentioned earlier, right, that I try to catch my extra shower water. But I don't get a chance to use it all because I live in a condo. So I only have so many plants that I can water with it, and I catch more water than I can use. So there's a step more that I could take, which is finding additional ways that I could use that extra water. And I haven't done that yet, right? So even if we're doing really good, there's always ways to do more. So the main message of Resilient SLO is to know that, hold on, let me move this out of my screen. Is that you can make a difference, everybody. Before moving to the next slide, I have a quick poll that I'd like you to participate in because this wasn't a bit of information that was very interesting to me that I did not realize the answer to. So I am curious if you all know, there's a poll. Should have popped up. Go ahead and try to answer this. What percentage of US emissions come from households? So of all of the household emissions, what percentage are we as people who live in homes responsible for? Okay, getting some 10s, 25s, 40%, 8%. Nobody's going for 75, huh? Okay, we know that. All right, great. So actually, 40% of US emissions come from household activities. I was really surprised about that because I think a lot of us hear about how, industry, governments, they are such huge contributors to greenhouse gas emissions and the carbon footprints we're all making. And what that means is that a lot of us feel like what we do doesn't make a difference. And I saw that reflected in some of the chat earlier, right? What is me saving my little bit of water from a shower going to make a difference when you've got, ag that's all over the place? So, what Resilient Slow helps to do, hold on, I'm going to stop those polls real quick. Okay, so the next question we have to ask is, of that 40%, what household activity do you think is responsible for the most emissions?
The bathroom.
Did someone say the bathroom? Okay, so we're talking about carbon emissions. And yeah, your bathroom might be a big emitter. We'll see. So the general categories of household emissions come from our transportation, our home energy needs, our food choices and our waste choices with our food, and our spending choices.
I don't understand household activity as transportation. That you're not in your household when you're transporting.
True. Yes. But your household transports itself. So that's why transportation is included in this statistic and in this poll. So meaning household transportation is like when you drive your car to the grocery store or when you ride your bike to the grocery store versus trucks that transport goods across the country. So household transportation is the transportation that you yourself do. Or if you fly to see, family over the holidays or whatnot. Okay, so actually transportation is the largest, you guys were close. Transportation is the largest portion of our household emissions, which allows us to say that we have a lot of room to make choices. So these are the categories of our household emissions and how much we contribute to our overall carbon footprint here. And you can start considering those options and figuring out the ways that you really do have the power to do something. So I'm going to highlight a few of the solutions available to us, starting with renewable energy, right? Homeowners might install solar panels. Resilient Slow, the platform, which I'm going to show you in a second, provides information on how to explore that idea, not just for homeowners, but as well as people like me who are renters. So, right, unplug most of our electronics, Karen put in there when not in use, right? That's something that anybody can do, whether you're a renter or a homeowner. So you can get those sorts of information, that sort of information on the website. So another solution is using clean and renewable energy. So for example, there's heat pumps, and there's a lot that's going to be coming out in this next year about heat pumps, information, availability, accessibility, and a lot of rebate programs that are coming out. And we don't have time to go into how those work right now, but it's pretty cool technology. But there's also things like, again, if I'm a renter and I can't I can't install a heat pump, I can choose on with 3CE, I can choose my to source all of my energy from renewable energy. And that's a way that I can make a difference there. We've got electric vehicle options. One thing I didn't know that I found out on the platform is that there is state-funded grants for low-income people who want to upgrade to an electric or hybrid vehicle. And you can get grant money, meaning you don't have to pay it back if you're low income, that will go towards a new or used electric vehicle or hybrid vehicle. That's fantastic to know. We want to make sure that more people know about that. And then, of course, our food choices. Fortunately, here on the Central Coast, which I think most of you are from the Central Coast, we've got CSAs, community supported agriculture, where you get your farm box delivered. We've got farmers markets every day of the week. We've got food co-ops. So we have a lot of options there. And then finally, one of those common sets of actions that people typically think of is reducing, reusing, and recycling. Right here, I highlighted reducing because that is the first thing that we can do before we even get the things, is to reduce what we have in the first place. And that's a category that we have a lot of control on. So, and there's more ideas here too. Fantastic, coming in through the chat. So to get involved as an individual here, what we have is this fantastic online technology platform. If you're here in SLO County area, it's Resilient SLO. You can go to resilientslo.org. If you're outside of the SLO County area, you can go ahead and start at resilientcentralcoast.org. And through that, you can put in your address and it will point you to whatever local platform there is. So there is a national platform called Bright Action that anybody can go to and get some generalized US-based ideas and opportunities. But a lot of your communities will have localized versions of this platform, which we do here in Resilient SLO, and it'll give you specific things to your community, specific ways you can get involved, those specific rebates. So for example, if PG&E or 3CE have a rebate, it's going to show up on that platform. Once you're on the platform, you build a profile. Your profile can be as simple or detailed as you want. The more detailed you make it, the more information you'll be able to track for yourself. But don't not do it because you think you have to put in all the information. You don't. Do it as simple or as in-depth as you'd like to be. And then once you're on there, you want to start figuring out what kind of actions you want to take. And I'll show you those in a second as well. And then hopefully you're going to get other people involved. So this is an example of what a base level starting point looks like. So this is just generated on the Resilient SLO platform, putting in some basic information. And so this will tell you where you're starting and where you compare to the rest of the community and to the country.
Yeah.
This is a section. Yes.
Okay, Raja.
Oh, this is a section where you'll be able to see all the progress that you made. Obviously, there's no progress here yet because this was a brand new platform, but it's kind of fun to track the progress that you make. And then these are the categories of actions that you can take. So once you're there, you can start to choose the actions that you're interested in. You can choose actions that you already take to start tracking where you already are. And then you can get information in any of those categories for things you want to learn more about. So for example, you're clicking through here and you can click through recycle or eat lower down the food chain. Here's one I clicked into replacing your lawn, and it'll give you information about how much impact it has, as well as action steps, tips, and connect you to the local resources. And again, the most effective way to do this is to do it with friends and to do it with other people and as a group. And the exciting thing today that I get to share with you is that you've got help right now to be a leader in your community. So we are now working with Cal Poly Climate Corps Fellows. We have 70 from Cal Poly alone working on the Resilient SLO platform and working on connecting people and groups, whether it's your business or your Rotary, like Dawn mentioned earlier, or just you in your home. We have Cal Poly College Corps Fellows who we can connect you with to help you do this work, to help you figure out this platform. How are you going to use it? Help create challenges within your group and your friends and your family. We have a couple of them I see who have logged on today, who have been here in this presentation. They are a fantastic resource and we want to make use of them absolutely. So how does that work? We would talk a little bit more about what they can do if we had more time, but since we're out of time, these are the ways that you can be a climate champion here in SLO. Primarily, we want you to get involved. So this is my contact information. If you are interested in working with any of these Cal Poly fellows, if you have any other questions about utilizing this platform or gathering groups together, whether it's a nonprofit that you're a part of, or you're working in a community-based organization, or you think your business might want to take this on as a challenge, we are here to help you. It's free to you. It often saves people money, and it helps people become a climate hero. So apologies for the very, very short rush through part on that platform. I'd love to share more at some point. I'd be happy to come in and do shorter or longer presentations to any of you in any of your meetings. You can get in touch. So it is 1:02. I know that a lot of you have short time periods, so thank you to everybody who has come so far. And I will turn it over to Dawn, or maybe if John wants to, or Andy can run any questions or any of that as we wrap up.
Right. Well, huge thank you to our speakers, our panelists today. You've been totally amazing. This session is scheduled to 1:30, but we do understand that sometimes folks are on their lunch break. So if you have to drop off, no one will be offended, but we have allowed this time to be able to have more Q&A and discussion. And I'll go ahead and kind of share some that I've captured, that we've been capturing from the chat, and then feel free to type more in as you come along, and we'll open it up potentially as well, see how that time goes. But I did want to, there were a few questions that came up, and even Dawn started to get the conversation rolling about involving youth and kids. And, what does that look like? How do you keep that positivity and still have, because that is an age group that often can feel very overwhelmed by climate change and the impacts there. So maybe start with Dawn and then go to Laura, and what you're seeing is for opportunities for working with youth and kids. Sorry, Dawn, you're muted though.
Yeah. Great question. And I did put a little something in the chat about it. I was invited by Myla Albers to come talk to her US history classes at Laguna Middle School, 8th graders. And it's the first time that I'd worked with 8th graders around climate change. And so it was an interesting experience. They really ate it up. I mean, I gave them some basic information about the climate, a lot of things they don't know about, like some things that frankly I only learned about recently. Just the sheer volume of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, 1.5 trillion tons, the fact that it lasts up there for 300 to 1,000 years. The fact that the United States has contributed twice the amount of anybody as a legacy to that amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Just facts that they didn't have any notion about. And then we pivoted to, okay, well, what can we do about it? And they were very engaged around it. They were very interested. They came up with, hey, this is what I love to do. One person was an artist, and even she drew a picture about climate change, while we were having the session. And so they're eager to find opportunities to move. Obviously the antidote to anxiety is action. And so, if we can inform them and if we can engage them in taking action, it's a wonderful thing. Maybe Barry Rands could do drive-arounds with EV vehicles, or ride-alongs or whatever. But there's a lot of interest there. There's a lot of opportunities. Some of you are teachers. If you're teachers, you don't have to come up with all this yourself. I'd be glad to share my deck with somebody or come in and do it with you, with your class. We can work together and get this done.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Laura, do you have anything to add?
Absolutely, thanks. Yeah, we actually have a College Climate Corps fellow cohort this year who are specifically working on engaging our community through the schools. So most of their work will be focused on the high schools. They'll be engaging like the eco clubs, the green clubs at high schools, working directly with the students there. But we also have open source curriculum for teachers. It does utilize, and it's based out of the resources that are available through the Resilient SLO or Resilient Central Coast platforms. But it is curriculum that can help engage. And as far as the the eco-anxiety, I know Heidi Harmon, our previous mayor, who is now working with Let's Green California, she's offered some eco-anxiety trainings for some of us who are working with this Resilient Slow program. And I can reach out to her, see if she does that like on a bigger scale or to any other groups, because I don't know if it was Denise who, if you just brought that up, but it is a very real thing, right? That scary thing to talk about. And I think it's really important that we recognize that. So that yes, we're not triggering anybody's fears, but actually approaching it from this, hey, we've got solutions right now. This will help you feel better because you really can do some things. Yeah. So if anybody's interested in that curriculum, the open source curriculum, or having the fellows come to any of schools that you have, any of that, please let me know. Get in touch with me.
Great. Thanks so much. And I think you're right. That kind of balancing act is that you don't want to deny the reality of those feelings, you know, to be able to, I've heard climate grief. And so to be able to both acknowledge it and engage in action as to help. I see your hand, Gina. I'm just going to ask another couple questions that have been coming through the chat, and then I'll circle back to you. There were some comments about people don't even know about climate action, and they're not, or they don't think it affects them. They're maybe too burnt out on other things. I know, Don, you mentioned about kind of that break the ice kind of conversation. What's some thinking about folks who aren't even a part of this conversation? They're either actively choosing not to, or it's just not even on their radar. Do we just kind of work with what we got in the kind of the inner circles, or how do we move out?
Well, the good news is the research shows, documented in the book, that we only have to get like 25% of a group or an organization or a community engaged around these topics. But that's the tipping point. We don't have to get to 51%, which we get all fixated on, you know, from elections. But so we don't have to get everybody, but we do have to get a lot more people than we've got, and a lot more people than are just, you know, those that are drinking the Kool-Aid, as they say. So one of the things is to figure out how to engage and how to break the ice. And there's a whole bunch of suggestions about it in the book. One that I think is a very good suggestion that I would pull out of the several that are there is to just share with somebody something that interesting that you learned about the climate or related to climate. Like, you know, I just heard the story on NPR that we, you know, every year we're losing 36 million trees in our urban areas. Wow, I was surprised by that because I thought people were valued trees. Like, okay, well, what can we do about that? And then you sort of pivot over to, well, there are opportunities for us to plant trees. And, you know, we can do that with EcoSlow, we can do that with the city, we can do it with others. So you can kind of pivot from what's of interest to you, because you're never wrong to share something that's of interest to you. Where people resist is when they feel like we're trying to impose their solution on them. Like they have to have an EV car just because we got one, or they have to plant a tree because, you know, we're interested in planting trees. But if we just share what we're doing in an open way, it invites them, you know, and you look for when their eyebrows rise. That means they're interested. And then you go with what their interest is.
Can I add to that? I think this problem of how do we grow the people who are interested in doing climate action, I want to put out another shout out to the Resilient Slow platform, because the whole concept is you start with a catalyst like everyone in this room, and they take their community, whether that's your nonprofit or your Rotary Club or your office, and then you start spreading this platform around to that small community, and it spreads. So that is one really great way to just sort of start to get the tentacles in. And you can it has like fun stuff. You can build up points and you can compete against other teams, and it kind of can make a fun game out of it. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you, Justin. Bursting with enthusiasm, couldn't hold back. Awesome. Laura, I'm going to switch slightly on the question, just because I do think that Resilient Slow does have so many opportunities to plug in and, based on different motivations. But we're also seeing kind of like, how are we making opportunities available to kind of disadvantaged, underrepresented communities? And I would imagine that a lot of the work of the Climate Corps Fellows is also going to be focused on these harder to reach audiences. There was some earlier chat about, folks are just trying to, make rent and buy groceries. So how's Resilient Slow fit into kind of a broader inclusion work?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for that question, because I really wanted to address that and wasn't sure when I was going to. So thank you for teeing that up for me. I read those comments earlier, and another thing that I learned recently is actually, let's see, I pulled up a study right here. This study was in April of 2021, so just last year. And it turns out the percentage, this is a study on the percentage of US adults who say it's very important that proposals to reduce the effects of climate change are helping the communities. Black US residents were the largest group to say that it was very important. So that was like the top element, right? 68% of Black respondents marked it as very important, followed by Hispanic respondents, 55%. Wow. So even more than any other racial demographic there, people of color feel it's very responded. And it's similar to that, lower income people answered it as the most important thing as well. So 54% of respondents who are lower income said it was very important. So while, yes, people who are struggling to just simply put food on the table also understand this very real intersectionality between the effects of climate change and lower income neighborhoods, underserved, disadvantaged, marginalized communities, people of color, those communities. These are the communities that are feeling those effects. I know earlier it was talked about that, some of the hesitation to get involved is that we're not feeling the effects right now. These communities are. They're in the neighborhoods who don't have access to the fresh food. They're in the neighborhoods who have water issues. They're in the neighborhoods who, have gases coming to them through factories or whatnot, right? So they're feeling it the most, they care the most, according to these studies. So it's entirely essential to engage them from so many perspectives, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because there is a true desire to figure out a solution, which means there's room to move, right? There's room to move and to lower those carbon footprints. So as far as Resilient Slow is concerned, we actually are involved right now in a study that 3CE, so Community Choice Energy, grant funded a study to study the Resilient Slow platform with an equity lens. And so looking at it from that equity perspective, saying, is this accessible? Is this reachable? Is it applicable? That study is looking at, we're going to be looking at, if somebody brought this home to their grandma over Christmas, right? And their grandma, for example, is Spanish monolingual. Is this going to be anything relevant to her? Is she going to be able to access that website? Is the content that she sees on it intriguing to her, interesting, useful, any of that? So we're currently underway and hoping to wrap that up this spring. So an equity study there. And then as far as my College Corps Fellows, I'm super excited because I was able to identify in these Cal Poly students, when we first met with them, I was able to identify students who were either or Spanish or bicultural and or Spanish bilingual, and or had an interest in supporting marginalized and underrepresented and Spanish monolingual homes here on the Central Coast in their work this year. And so I pulled them all together. So I have a cohort that is specific. I call it my Jedi Bee cohort. It's my cohort who we are specifically targeting groups and avenues to reach out to all of those, any underserved population. And I'm really excited about that. They will help us with our Spanish translation, applicability, relevance, as well as reaching out to any other group that gets left off a lot. If you look at the faces that are here in this room, right? We kind of know who typically shows up for these types of things. And I've got a cohort specifically looking towards who are we not seeing in these groups, who are we not seeing in these conversations, and let's make sure that we're getting this information to them. So I'm really excited about that, Andy. Thank you for letting me highlight that.
Yeah, awesome. I had some hints as to what was going on, but that's even more amazing. So thank you so much for that. So we just have less than 10 minutes left because I want to make sure that we give our speakers a moment to have any last closing remarks. But otherwise, we'll go ahead and open it up to folks who want to raise their hand and unmute. I know Gina, and then I saw Kate's hand also. So if you have a comment, please make it brief, and otherwise state your question. Thanks.
So Slow UndocuSupport Fund has been doing focus groups with Mixteco and Spanish-speaking folks all over the county for what are the real needs in these communities, because we are in the business of making, raising money to help immigrant families. And in many situations, it started out in an emergency like the COVID, but it's going to become, all the time. And we do that through organizations that work directly with these people. And I'm just thinking that maybe there could be some interaction between the folks organizing the focus groups and Climate Coalition or Laura Mew, perhaps, whatever, to see if some information about their responses to climate issues could be incorporated into the focus groups.
Absolutely. I'm glad that you shared that, Gina. They're already on the list of community groups to engage with. And actually, Vicky Prothro is actually here in our meeting today. And she is the equity advisor for Slow Climate Coalition, and she is heading up So Climate Coalition's participation in this equity study. So she's got the names. She's already met with Latino Outreach Council, for example, and has the names of some of these other organizations to have them weigh in as well. Thank you.
I'd like to give her the names of the folks in Slow UndocuSupport.
I've got that already. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome, great, thank you. Thanks, Gina. Kate.
Just quickly, I know that there is a lot of money, maybe not coming forward, at least in 2023 and beyond. There's a lot of money, and some of it is really tagged for, underserved communities and people of lesser economic means. Is that going to get rolled into the Resilient Slow platform in terms of assistance and help or rebates, things like that? That could help.
Yeah, so any rebates that are available to people in our community should be already on the platform. So like I said, that rebate or the grant, for example, that I found out about electric vehicles, I found out about that from clicking around on the Resilient Slow platform. So that was how I found out about it. We are in the process right now with our fellows of developing a better method to make sure that we are staying completely up to date. A lot of rebates and offerings do last for a while, so it's not like things change on a day-to-day basis, but we want to make sure that we're catching everything and also removing anything that's no longer valid. So by all means, if you ever go on the platform and you don't find something that is available, please let us know. You can let me know. But yes, it's all there. And so part of the work that we're doing, Kate, is trying to figure out, okay, we've got the information there. Really, that platform is so useful for information alone. We've got the information there. But the next step is making sure that our community is being engaged. And that's where the work of the fellows is really helpful, so that we can actually get to people and say, here is a resource, here are some tools, here's what, you can do. And in a lot of these cases, the resources available to take climate action actually save people money. right? It's not always, it's just, oh, rich people can help the climate. They can spend money on solar panels. There's ways that you can be climate proactive and save money at the same time. And so our work here is not only having that information there, but making sure that we're figuring out how to get it to everybody.
Right. Thank you. I don't see any other hands raised, so I'll go back to one that kind of came up in the chat in a couple different forms, and maybe start with Dawn on this one, which is about policy. And you in the, I love the triangle of the action, awareness, and advocacy. And there was some, I think that's some of the advocacy piece sometimes feels like a downer, because it's hard to have that momentum, and an individual versus a group thing. So Don, I don't know if you have any tips on kind of having success in that advocacy
Sure.
realm.
Well, there are lots of opportunities for advocacy. And one of the things that's very interesting about advocacy is they've done research, and it shows that people who have taken action themselves, not just saying, oh, the leaders should do X or Y or should pass bill A or B, but actually have taken action, when they go to their legislators, they're far more effective as advocates. So this whole idea of the AAA of climate health, awareness, action, and advocacy really creates a cycle that's like a flywheel effect, and it magnifies what you can do. So start anywhere, but build from there. On the advocacy thing, we have some excellent groups locally. I've been coming to get to know better, and I've joined the Citizens Climate Lobby. They have a very organized system about it. For a long time, they were really just focused on a carbon fee and dividend policy, but they're now shifting to natural solutions and a broader platform that can include the kinds of things like tree planting and soil health and other things that we're talking about, as well as electric vehicles and such. So they have, if nothing else, you'll want to go online and just go and watch the video on how to be an effective advocate. I think they've nailed it from my experience on the Hill. I think they've got it figured out, and I've participated with them on some of the calls. So those are some good ways. If you want other advocacy groups, again, go to solveclimatechangenow.com, and I put a list of resources for awareness, a list of resources for action, and a list of resources for advocacy groups, so that you can pick and choose what fits with you. I think there's a lot of power working with interfaith groups because they have an ethic of sharing and of sacrificial giving. And that's part of what we're facing with regard to climate change, is the need to really examine what we consume. I mean, one of the things that's startling is documented in the book is that if everyone were to have the North American lifestyle, we need 4.7 planets worth of resources to give everybody that lifestyle. So we have some important equity and other questions to look at, as well as innovation that's needed to help get a better lifestyle out to more and more people without all the drain on our natural systems that our way of having accomplished this has resulted in imposing.
I just wanted to add to that too. I posted earlier about the agricultural resource use and whatnot. The resource conservation districts have been really, really helpful. And I know a lot of people have never heard of that. They don't know what a resource conservation district is. So if you go to the California Association at carcd.org, you can find whatever district you are in your area. And resource conservation districts help landowners, land managers, ranchers, farmers do what they need to do with the land and water, just anywhere around them, in a way that is conservation focused. And so they've done a ton of work. And I know I just met with them at the California State Association a couple of weeks ago. And I know that they're very focused on becoming more prominent in Sacramento for all of that policy work. So I would suggest, if you're interested in solutions and policy work, that you might want to pay attention to what they're doing in the future, because I think they'll become more and more active, and they'll be able to help garner more of that collective policy motivation.
Great, great advice and resources. So we're wrapping up our time here. Geraldine, I see your hands up. If your hand is up, if you have a quick comment or question, and then otherwise we'll circle back to wrapping up.
Okay, I wanted to make a really quick comment about, it's called, oh my God, climatetrace.org. Al Gore is involved with this, as well as other organizations. You are literally able to get information on emissions. It breaks down everything throughout the whole world. Agriculture, buildings, even locally in our community, every building, every business, and how, what emissions that they're putting out. This is really a major breakthrough. We have this information now. We can work with businesses, houses, agriculture, for the forestry, everything, and on ways and how we can, improve stuff. I mean, this is really a big deal. So check out climatetrace.org.
Climatetrace.org. All right, thank you.
Yes.
All right, and with that, Laura or Dawn, do either of you have a quick something, and then we'll circle back to John to close us out. Anything you need to add?
I'll go first on because mine's super easy. I'm just going to say, please check out the website, resilientslo.org or Resilient Central Coast if you're not in the county of SLO. There's so much information there, and then set up a profile and then get in touch with me. I can help walk you through it. I can help make it work for you. I would love to connect you with a fellow who can help you bring it to your, book club or neighborhood group or business or organization. So go there, please. Check it out and get in touch with me.
And I would just add that I'd be delighted to be a resource to any of you and to the groups and organizations and communities of which you're a part, with talks or workshops or live action projects. Together we can solve climate change now. And I really appreciate your interest and activity and support in doing that.
Great. John, you get the last word.
Okay, I too want to say my thank you to the presenters and Andy for a great webinar, and for all those that attended. And if you have any suggestions for a future webinar, please put them in the chat or reach out to me at john@slowclimatecoalition.org. And in terms of advocacy, please don't forget about the Slow Climate Coalition. We send out action items for locally at the city council to the state level. For example, the CPUC on the 15th is considering making solar much more expensive for residences and commercial buildings. We'll probably cut solar installs in half when they should be doubling or tripling. So please don't forget about check out the Slow Climate Coalition, get on our alert system, and you'll find a good place for accuracy because there is strength in numbers. For example, the NEM program, they have almost 400 organizations working together on a statewide basis. And that's the only way you get success is through numbers. And good things do happen. And I really appreciate the motivation from Don and Laura. And with that, thank you all for attending.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for showing
Thank
up,
you.
everyone.
Have a
Climate
great day.
heroes.
Yes.
Thank you. Good job, everybody.
Laura, are you still planning on hanging around afterwards, or is